Hi, folks. Welcome to Great Books, Big Ideas. My name's Jim. Thanks for joining me. I wanted to update you on two books I finished reading this week. One is Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House, a perfect novel for Halloween, and also a nice fit for Halloween month, Sigmund Freud, The Uncanny, with this amazing cover painting by Max Ernst. Anyway, I read this one first. It's been on my TBR for a few months, and this was a fitting month to get around to reading it. So what is this? It's basically a scary haunted house tale, and it's about this house that's been haunted. It's supernatural things are occurring in it, lots of poltergeist activity and so forth. And you have four main characters who are visiting this house to do some experimenting on it. Dr. Montague, and then he has solicited help from these outsiders who none of whom know each other. They're introduced to one another when they arrive at the house. Eleanor Vance and Theodora, who's sort of an artistic intellectual type, and I think his name is Luke Sanderson, who is an heir to this house, but he's young. Doesn't possess the house yet. I'm not sure he would want to after what the things that happened in Hill House. But in any case, it's up on this hill, like outside of this village, and it's real hard to get to, and it's like perfectly remote in the woods and up on the hill. And it's, I'm picturing like this could be like a New England setting. I'm not sure where she really wanted to set the novel, but that would fit. And it's really a story about Eleanor, who's the focalizer. She's the, you sort of see most of the plot through her eyes, even though it's not a first-person narration. And without giving too much of the plot away, there are certain things in Eleanor's past, and particularly her relationship with her mother, that are at issue, and there's some baggage there. And by the end of the novel, you understand a little bit more her depth psychology, and why the house seems to be singling her out as a target. And certain things happen to Eleanor by the end of the book, which I won't give away, but it's what makes it a psychological horror story. This was turned into a Netflix series, as you can see here. I haven't seen the series, so I can't comment on that. It's also been made into a film called The Haunting, which I believe came out in the 1960s. I heard that's one of the most scary films ever, but I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it. Maybe I'll watch it for Halloween. But anyway, I'm really glad I read this. It's a kind of a quirky book, too. Like, it didn't quite read exactly how I expected to. The way she managed all the spookiness was very well done. Like, there were some real kind of scary moments that were dramatic. I liked that quite a bit, even to the point where I felt like I was hearing things in my own house. I mean, that's the sign of a good horror story. But the banter between these characters who are just getting to know each other, and there's some flirtation going on, and they're kind of keep things light, even though all these spooky things are happening. It was almost off-putting. Like, there was a real cognitive dissonance between sort of the register of the dialogue between these characters and then all the kind of really pretty disturbing things that were happening with regularity in the house. There's also a couple characters, Mr. and Mrs. Dudley, who are caretakers of the home. They're creepy, too. They do not want to be in this house at night, so they only show up during the day to help out with the cooking and cleaning and maintenance. But and then later in the book, Mr. Montague's wife shows up with her sort of sidekick pal, who's a headmaster of a school. They provide some additional comic relief and try to push the plot forward a little bit too. But really, this is, in my opinion, Eleanor's story, but also Eleanor and Theodora and Luke. There's a triangle there that's of interest. And Yeah, but the house seems to be putting its finger on Eleanor. So that's The Haunting of Hill House. If you've read this, let us know in the comments what you thought of it. What was your experience of the book? Or if you've seen any of the TV or movie tie-ins. I'm curious how those adaptations worked out. Now that book made me think of this Sigmund Freud book, The Uncanny. The Uncanny was an essay that Freud wrote, and I first read it in a science fiction anthology when I was teaching one semester. I taught a introduction to literature class that was themed in sci-fi, and it's a good anthology. It pairs a lot of good stories with literary theory and cultural theory. And one of those was the Sigmund Freud essay, The Uncanny, which is this attempt to explain what the uncanny is, how it operates, how it works on our psychology. And in that essay, Freud does he does a couple things. One is he does a deep dive into the etymology of the word the uncanny, which in German I think it's Heimlich or unheimlich. And his sort of, once he kind of probes this definition, he seizes on some particular facets of the definition. And basically, if I'm remembering the essay right, the uncanny for Freud is when something familiar comes back in a strange, unfamiliar context. But what makes it scary and spooky is the fact that you kind of recognize it, but it's warped, it's different, it's off, and that's what makes it strange, and makes it even scarier. A lot more to it than that, but that's what I can kind of glean off the memory banks right now. The second major thing he does in that essay is a literary analysis of the short story The Sandman by E.T.A. Hoffmann, German writer. That is a creepy story, and I want to reread that story. I actually have a Heritage Press collection of stories by Hoffmann, which I haven't gotten around to reading. I think I might put that on the TBR. But anyway, really enjoyed rereading that essay by Freud. He's a great analyst. But there's more. This book is not just the uncanny. That's just one of the featured essays that gives the Penguin Classics title its title. But there are other short pieces in here. One is called Screen Memories, which is this theory that we often have childhood memories that are kind of false. So we think things actually happen a certain way, but really it's our present self that's kind of like throwing stuff back into the past, like stuff that maybe we're having problems dealing with or we're repressing it. And it just sort of becomes part of a memory that isn't entirely true. But that doesn't stop Freud from analyzing it. It's a pretty interesting essay. And then The Creative Writer in Daydreaming, which is an essay that I also have read before. It was in an anthology of critical theory when I took a course as an undergrad. Well, I think that's where I first encountered it. But anyway, that's Freud sort of exploring the psychology of creative writing, which is a subject that's of interest to me because I'm a writer too. And when I first read that essay, I was maybe a little bit miffed at Freud, the way he was psychoanalyzing creative types. But the more I read that essay, I think the more I agree with him. I think he was maybe onto something. There's also a very short essay called Family Romances. But the other big feature is a long essay. The longest essay in the book is called Leonardo da Vinci and a Memory of His Childhood. So he seizes, it's biographical criticism, really, where he's looking at the life of this Renaissance man, Leonardo da Vinci, and he seizes on this one childhood memory of a dream that da Vinci had, which involved a vulture. Like he was a baby and the vulture tail was like kind of hitting his face, his mouth. And of course, Freud just goes to town instantly on that. We're not even sure how accurate this dream was. It's just one little aside in someone's biography of Da Vinci. And the introduction to this book, Hugh Houghton does the introduction. He is skeptical of sort of how accurate all this is, but accuracy didn't really stop Sigmund Freud either. Like, you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. Like, he will go to town and do his thing, psychoanalyzing anybody, even himself. So to make a long story short, he sees Leonardo. One thing he's trying to explain is Leonardo's shift from art to science. He was interested in all kinds of things, but as his career developed, he seemed to do less and less art and more science and observation and engineering and plans like that. And so he spends a lot of time psychoanalyzing Leonardo da Vinci. He does a really interesting analysis of the Mona Lisa too, which I think is worth reading. Whether you agree with him or not, he's always interesting. And long story short, he sees Leonardo as apparently Leonardo had a reputation for being, more or less celibate. Like, he never married. He didn't seem to have much interest in sex and romance. At one point in his life, he was accused of being a homosexual, but he seemed to skirt those charges. Freud does see him as a homosexual or a latent homosexual or a celibate homosexual, and that's partly explained why things worked out the way they did for Leonardo. So take it for what it's worth, but that's an interesting essay, a long essay. It's in several chapters, 4, 5, 6 chapters, but I found it to be highly readable. I actually, no matter what you think about Sigmund Freud, and there's a lot of dispute about his theories, I don't need to go into that, but I think he's a fine writer. He is fun to read. It's like reading Sherlock Holmes doing psychology. Like, the guy is a detective. He's a mental detective. He's like, and things unfold and reveal, and they're just to watch how his mind works and how he kind of unweaves things and ties things back together is pretty fascinating. It's he was a very fine writer, which is probably why his theories caught on, because people could follow them, they understood them, and of course they're kind of racy too. Even by today's standards, there's things in here that were like, okay, well, I guess I'll keep turning the page because this just got pretty interesting, right? Anyway, that's The Uncanny by Sigmund Freud. Nice set of essays, nice Penguin Classics edition there. And that was translated by David McClintock, I think it says. Yeah. So anyway, that's my reading update for books I've finished. I think I'll keep it short. We won't go into TBRs or actively reading. I'm reading all kinds of stuff. But anyway, what have you guys been reading? If you have any reactions to Freud or Shirley Jackson, let me know what you think. One more detail about Shirley Jackson because I don't want to forget it, is a lot of us came to Shirley Jackson thanks to her short story, The Lottery. And if you never read The Lottery, just shut off the video and go read it. It's an incredible story. I've read it. It's it was published in the New Yorker, I think in around 1948. It got the most letters to the editor in reaction to the story as anything they have ever published. Really fascinating story. But in reading a little bit more of Shirley Jackson's biography, I discovered that, she was living in Vermont when she wrote that story. And she lived in North Bennington, Vermont. And apparently she had that place in mind when she wrote The Lottery. Like, there must be a town square in North Bennington. And that is sort of where she imagined The Lottery taking place. So next time I'm in Vermont, my daughter lives in Vermont, I do pass through Bennington on the way there. I'm going to have to stop in North Bennington and check out that scene of the action. Maybe I'll bring some rocks with me. Anyway, hope everyone is well. Hope you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.